Okay, I'd like to welcome you to the celebration of the end of the RAD Lab project. This is part of our tradition here. You see the agenda for the day. I'll talk 10-ish minutes or less to set the stage, try and remember how the project started. Michael, who was the ringmaster that got everybody else into shape, is going to give the rest of the introduction, to give you the overview of what's happened to the project over time, and then you'll see a bunch of the pieces of the technology and live demos. I hope you brought your laptops. I hope you have your wireless so you can try this stuff out. And then after lunch, they'll explain what is going on behind the curtain, and then some time for some reflections and feedback, and then some fun in the evening, including a dinner. So a little over 5 years ago, we were trying to figure out how we were going to do big research like we'd done in the past, and so a group of us came up with this technical idea and then went to companies like yours to try and get sponsorship. What we decided was the moonshot statement was that a single person could go from a vision to a next generation IT service, and we used this example from eBay up here, Omnidar, and that he did it over a long weekend. It was the hope that a single person could create this over the long weekend, and the fact that a single person could do it meant that we could create the Fortune 1 million. And so we wanted to, one of our big bets was that systems and networking that had always worked closely together would be able to leverage machine learning, and so we had leaders in all of those areas, and then look for companies that are like the companies in this room to be the sponsorship, and that led to the RAD Lab. At the time, we used this dado, which is actually the name of the thing that connects the column from the top to the pedestal. That's called the dado, as their acronym. And the D was develop using primitives like MapReduce, as we said at the time, assess and measure, deterministic replay, and finding new results. You'll hear about deterministic replay. Deploy, and at the time our idea was to use the internet in a box and FPGAs. You'll find out what happened to that today. And one of the big bets was that statistical machine learning was going to help us being able to operate it. Okay. And then what the part of the bet was that your companies would want to do that is we've been relatively successful, and then one of the big pays-offs was training these future leaders, which you will see today. What we said was the traditional model was at least 4 steps with 4 different groups playing different roles, but we're on this new web development environment, software as a service as it became to be called, is a single team does all of these things, and with the operators carrying pagers, the developers being the operators and both deploying and measuring the system, that was this new world that we were excited about. So this is actually taken from the very first retreat. That's why it says a model. We'll talk about this. This was talking about 5 years ago. So develop these applications, and if you remember at the time at that very first retreat, we had James Gosling of Sun, because we thought we might have to invent a new programming language. We didn't have any idea about we didn't know what we were going to do about that. In terms of the assess, Randy was going to talk about an annotation layer that although the servers had lots of data, not so much in the networks, and that we need some way to collect data on that. Deploy is how are we going to be able to do experiment with 1,000 loads, and the argument at that time was ramp, that we would build something out of FPGAs to do 1,000 nodes, and that's not part of the demo today, but Randy's going to talk about the state of that later today. And then this was one of the big bets, using statistical machine learning to be able to operate this thing by a single person. And then at the time, this was the payoff. Berkeley's has this proud track record. This could be another great project. Please participate. And at the time, we were shooting for $2.5 million a year. We were looking for 3 or 4 companies to be founding companies. We had 3, Google, Microsoft, and Sun Microsystems. And then what was the deal? Part of it was we were going to have a mid-project review in 3 years, and we actually did the starting of the company. It said December 1st. It ended up being December 15th. Is when we started the RAD Lab. At the time, we had this was our timeline of the things we were going to do every year, and it's instead of 60 months. It took us 62 months to get to the end of Project Party, so we were 5% behind schedule, I guess, and which I'm sure is outrageous from an industrial perspective that we're 5%. And you'll see where we are today. At the time, this is what we said 5 years ago. DARPA was exiting long-term research, so if you're going to do big projects like this, it wasn't going to be done with DARPA funding. And NSF was swamped with proposals. 6 years later, not much has changed. The people in DARPA say they're going to start funding academics. It's hard to see it so far. And this is just the final slide. That's what we want to do. That's the cap. The base is this technology, and Dado is the thing that connects them together. And I think that's it. So that's the setup today. And from this, I will turn it over to Michael, who will show you what happened from there.